Welcome to the Wellness Revolution podcast.
Thanks again for joining the Wellness Revolution. Today, we're going to talk about biohacking. And hacking, we think about computers being hacked, but you can hack your body. And there's a way to do this. We're going to talk about this with a biohacking expert. Oh gosh. Okay, so he told me how to pronounce his name, and then I promptly forget. Arvin Khamseh. Is that correct, Arvin?
That's
Arvin
correct.
Khamseh, hackmybiology.com, hackmybiology.com, because I want you to listen and go there while you're listening to this website, because this is how to make yourself healthier. And so, Arvin, welcome to the Wellness Revolution. Let's start with how you got started. You got an interesting backstory about how you got into biohacking. And I know you've come via Oxford trained geek, and we hear Oxford and we say, oh my God, he's brilliant. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure, yeah. I think from the age of, I want to say 7 or 8, I was part of this organization that was just all about competing and just being super smart, reading all these hardcore sciences. And there were times that I would just study. And, I was 8. It's not the time to be studying all day. And I was doing that. And then there were times that I would just look at all these smarter people in my classroom, and I would just see them not spending as much time on their studies, and they would still do much better. And it just made me think about what is it so special about their brain chemistry? What is it so special? Maybe that wasn't the word that I was thinking that time, but I was just so fascinated with the improvement in performance. And I think that was the first spark for me to just know, hey, there's certain people that have it figured it out. Maybe not through biohacking at that time, but they definitely have a different genetic, they have a different brain chemistry. They're doing it differently, whatever that is for them. And then later on, I had my own issues with my skin for about 10 years, and went through every single creams and medications, and it was so severe that I had to be medicated. And so it was tough because I was part of a swimming team and I wouldn't practice because of that. And it really affected my life, the quality of my life. So the social life was impacted. And, at that age, around 10, 11, we're so superficial, and we just think,
only at 10 or 11 we're superficial?
For some people, it continues to the rest of their life. So I was just not really happy with the way things were going, and that the traditional healthcare wasn't helpful for me at that point. And so I started actually looking to see, okay, what are there any alternatives for it? And then I worked at a research lab later on. I started reading a lot more papers and learned how to do it for myself. And then in 4 weeks, I created this protocol for myself that I healed that 10 years of having trouble with my skin. And then also in about 1 or 2 months, I added about 215 pounds to my deadlift. And it was because of how much more energy I was having through hacking my own biology. And so then it got me excited, and I started sharing it with everyone else.
So, but you also talked about helping your parents. What were your parents?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So another thing, I think another thing that was really a big influence in my life was just seeing my parents. So my dad, still actually to this day, he functions on 6 cups of coffee. That's a lot of caffeine, and every day. And I was just not kind of person that I would say, hey, I'm going to be dependent on a stimulant, or just say that's the kind of performance that I want to have on a daily basis. So I wanted more. And I didn't want to go on 6 cups of coffee. And so that was a big deal for me to just think, hey, is there a way to change my biology in such a way that I can actually function past 3 p.m. slump? And that was a big deal for me to just say, hey, I really need to get this right, because this is really affecting my dad. And then my mom had trouble with her weight, and that was another thing for me to just say, hey, so obviously there are some difficulties for people losing weight. So my mom, I saw her try for 10 years, 11 years, and she wasn't getting results that she wanted. And so obviously if it was just the information, just knowing, hey, exercise more, eat less, then everyone would be getting the results. So maybe there was something more to it, at least for some people. And again, that was another spark for me to just say, hey, what is it so special about changing our biology so that we can customize it and get the results that we want to get in health and fitness?
Yes. Oh, I think it's so important because you talked about how am I going to get past the 3 o'clock slump? And so somebody like me, trained in functional medicine, is like, oh, his cortisol is a problem. And then for somebody like your mother, it's like, okay, well, if I can look at her, I can figure out which of her hormones are imbalanced. And all you have to do is balance them back. And I'm talking about balancing them back, not using pharmaceuticals,
right,
or exercise or something like that, but by using the right foods and the right, oils and the right kind of exercise for your particular body type. But if you don't address those issues, like you're saying, the 3, so maybe there's something about your biology that predisposes you to the cortisol slump, the 3 o'clock slump. And so many people have that. There's stress. But some people can go through stress and not have that problem, and other people are completely wiped out. And so tell us about, what did you do for the 3 o'clock slump?
Oh yeah, so that one is a big one. I created this protocol that I'm actually sharing it here with you guys. So basically really looking into see what are some energy vampires that we have in our life, and then get rid of them. Yes. And then what are some routines that we have to energize ourselves? So let's say if it's I have this breathing technique that I can actually share with you guys. It's called 5-15-10. It's just based on how many times you breathe, and then I'll share that in a little bit. And then the other thing is the lifestyle. So what is your diet? What are you doing on a daily basis? And so those were the 3 pillars, if you want to call that. And from that space, I realized, I was like, okay, so I really want to be able to function not only just past 3 p.m. until, let's say, 5 p.m. I want to have the same amount of energy until, the time that I'm going to the bed, like maybe about an hour before that. So about like 9 p.m. And so I looked into every single thing about my body. I started actually learning more about my hormones. You were talking about hormones, just see, hey, what's my cortisol looking, let's say early in the morning and then maybe later in the night? Is it actually doing the path that it's supposed to do? So is it really high, let's say 6 to 8 a.m., so around, 10 to 20, maybe if you do it from blood. And then maybe right before bed, is it gonna be less than 5? Again, if you take it from blood and take the measurements from blood. And that was one of my things, and just say, hey, what are some routines I can implement in my daily routine? So be it, let's say, exercising first thing in the morning, be it increasing the exogenous ketones or endogenous ketones in my body, doing different things and just figuring out, okay, is this working with my body or not? And then really go from there. So there was I think it was, you were a functional med person. So it was a holistic way of looking at it, not just say, hey, what are some nootropics I can take at 3 p.m. so then it can just take me all the way to 10 p.m.
Okay, so let's talk about actually what you did.
Sure.
Give us some didactics of exactly what you did.
Yeah, it's a lot, sure. So for me, I realized, I was like, okay, if I sleep really well and if I improve the quality of sleep that I'm having, then I'm gonna have more energy throughout the day. That was just like a simple thing that I was just, okay, so that makes sense, right? And then I thought, okay, so what are some things that are actually, again, going back to that 3 things, the energy vampires, what are some things that are affecting my sleep right now? So Is it the blue light that I'm getting from the screen? Is it the intensity of light? Let's say past 5 p.m. What is the intensity of light that I want to have around me? Like let's say in my bedroom, everywhere I go. What wavelength of light I want to get past 5 p.m. That's actually really creating the same, I guess, rhythm for my body as if it was, let's say, 1,000 years ago. Because right now it's so different. You get blue light from the laptop, which is about, I want to say, about 2,300 Kelvin temperature, which is almost creating the same, I guess, same environment as you being in front of the sun, except you have it at, let's say, 8 p.m., which is the time that you don't have the sun in front of you. You don't get the sun exposure, and so that's gonna actually decrease the melatonin production. So every single thing I looked at to just see, hey, what are some things that are actually affecting my cortisol level to be high at night? What are some things that are improving my melatonin, and or what are some things that would decrease my melatonin, and then I would get rid of them. So there was blue light, it was EMF exposure, it was the toxins that I was having around me, and then what else? And then again, like doing more testing and just see, hey, what are some, for example, I went on a ketogenic diet, and then I found myself in about 3 months into it, I would wake up 3 a.m. in the morning. And I was like, oh, that's weird. This is not helping. And then so I looked into it, and it was my cortisol would shoot up at about 3 a.m. because I was so low on carb. And then so I thought, okay, well then I know I'm just gonna add a little bit more carbs to my diet on a daily basis and train my insulin so I can have about, let's say, 60 to 70 grams of carbs and still be in a ketogenic diet. So,
so it's interesting you talk about the ketogenic diet, because the ketogenic diet is all the rage right now.
Yeah.
But you have to understand how to use it properly, which is, so people just go on and they think, I'm not going to eat any carbs and this is how I'm going to do it, and that's it. And it's a little bit more nuanced than that, which is, as you found out, because you're following all these different things. What about some of the other, the ketogenic diet we know is particularly good for the brain when done a particular way, and there's a particular protocol that works. It's not just not eating carbs, there's a protocol that works. But what other things did you add into your eating? Like something that I recommend to people a lot are MCT oils and extra fish oil with extra DHA and stuff like that. So what else did you discover?
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I have this thing called a routine report I publish every month, where I list every supplements, every routines, everything let's say every biohacking devices that I even touch, it's going to be listed there, and with the dates, with how much supplements. So it's a full-on report, because I want to have transparency with people. Just say, hey, I actually live this life. And to answer your question, what foods that I was having that really changed for me, I realized, okay, so just not having a lot of, because I was actually on a lot of grains about 2 years ago, a lot. I thought that was a good idea. And so a lot of grains and a lot of sugar. Actually, not a lot of sugar, but a lot of grains, but some sugar. And then, so I cut that. And that already actually improved my sleep, because of how my blood sugar was stable, so I wouldn't wake up because of that. And then other things that I added into my diet, I'm trying to think. Well, I haven't done this. I heard, as far as diet, garlic is actually not that amazing for sleep quality. So if you have it, let's say in the evening, I heard that that's not, I guess from the clients, I heard that that's not serving them. It could just be something to do with their biology. I'm not sure. And I'm trying to think what else I've done So I do exogenous ketones. I do ketocana. I do MCT oil. I do coconut oil. In fact, every day I start my day with having coconut oil, butter, and dark chocolate.
Wow, people will love that dark chocolate one.
Yes, 100% dark chocolate. So it's a little bit bitter, but when you actually mix it with the coconut oil, it tastes amazing. Like I literally have people just making videos on my group just saying this was the best thing they found. So I would totally recommend trying just having coconut oil, butter, hopefully grass-fed butter, and then
Not
dark chocolate.
locally. It's got to be grass fed. Do we want to talk about that for a second? Let me just, I like to tell people, say butter. No, grass fed butter is important. Why is that important? Because cows that are eating grains means you are eating the grains. And so if you want the result, you want to make sure that the animal that you are eating is eating what you want in your body, because the animals are what you eat and you are what you eat. So it must be grass-fed butter.
Love it.
Else. Okay,
Yeah.
so I just want to stress that, because a lot of people think, okay, the other thing that's all the rage right now is people becoming vegan. So I had a lady say to me yesterday, she was trying to control her diabetes, and I became a vegan and I cut out meat. And I'm like saying, okay. Now I wasn't commenting on it because she was just giving me some information, but cutting out meat in and of itself isn't going to do it. Okay, you're eating a whole lot of yucky chicken. No, if you eat grass-fed beef, it's better than eating that yucky chicken that you're eating. And so there's a lot of preconceived, why do I say chicken is yucky? Just because of the way it's raised. Mm-hmm. It's not eating and getting what you need to put in your body, and that's why you're having problems. So if you think I'm going to cut out red meat and be good, no, don't cut out red meat. Put in grass-fed meat. If you want to drink milk, get rid of casein A milk and drink casein B milk, which is made by other animals other than cows. And so there's these little quote-unquote hacks that the reason why people are having problem is because they've gone to Dr. Google and decided they're going to try the latest and greatest. And as you did ketogenic, and there were some tweaks that you need to make about that ketogenic. Very common for people to eat a lot of grains, and then on top of it, not only grains, whole grains, which are worse than eating the refined ones because of the lectin, and people don't know that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So just wanted to do a little education piece in.
Of course. Yeah, I love it.
People get it wrong and can't figure out, well, I tried everything. And then when you actually do a food diary and start asking questions, you can see every single step of the way where, yes, you did to the best of your ability, but you didn't have this piece of knowledge, which meant that the implementation was not correct. So therefore, no result.
Yeah.
So, genetics. Let's talk a moment about genetics. We were off air talking about this. Where does genetics play a role? Because a lot of people say, well, everybody in my family has it. My genes have it. I know that I have an ApoE4 gene. And Apo, you know what that is. That's the gene associated with Alzheimer's. In addition, Alzheimer's is they know what it happens in the European population, but if you look at population, they also show that people who are African-American have a worse outcome, get more dementia than people. So I should be worried, right? We're wrong. Should I be worried? I'm not worried, but I'm not worried because I know enough about biohacking. So let's talk about genes in this whole thing, because people think their genes are their destiny, and your genes are not your destiny. You can turn on and off genes. But also, if you have particular genes, there are certain things that won't work for you, and you have to be careful. So tell us about, there's a big hack that we talked about that people use, this substance. Tell us about that substance and what it is and the problem with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So just before we go on the genetics, I just want to say something that you said about the grass-fed is that even when people, let's say, like go after grass-fed meat, there is grass-fed and then there is grass-fed finished as well. So we want to get into details. there's some people that just say, hey, it is grass-fed. And it's like, wait, is it grass-fed finished as well? And then they were like, no. It's like at the end, or like somewhere in between, they were just fed grains. So I think that's a little details that it just keeps getting, I guess, people keep starting gaming this to, I guess, the wording. So you want to be really clear on what grass-fed means for them as well. And then going back to genetics, totally different topic. Okay, so genetics, I found it to be fascinating because there's just so much. Obviously, there are about 10 million SNPs, the single nucleotide polymorphism. So it just means whatever, there's a change in the DNA just based on time, based on exposure, there's a mutation, whatever that is. That's not the important part. The important part is that there's just so many combinations of genes, and then also the way the genes are expressed. And so we can get so much info, and it can be overwhelming. So I found some people, they stay away from actually getting their genetics done and just knowing a little bit about it, because they just think, well, what am I going to do with it? It's just going to be overwhelming. And I think there are definitely some genes that are more established. So you talked about the ApoE4 gene. That one is definitely more established. So then that's the one that you can actually say, hey, now that I know about this gene, what are some things I want to change about my routine? So maybe I want to be mindful of the routines that I'm having around, let's say, my brain chemistry, or it's like, how much I'm hurting my brain cells. Like, am I drinking alcohol every day? Am I staying up all night every day? How am I going to treat my body? It's just going to be a little bit different based on the information we have. And so sometimes I understand why sometimes people don't want to know it, because they have to actually make changes. So that's the I guess that's the context of it. And then what we can do with it, and the substance that you were talking about. So there are so many different substances that, I mean, even so if it's stimulant, the nootropics, or even if it's medications, you can actually see how your body would do toward that medication or whatever stimulant or substance it is. And I guess another difficult part is that if you actually see, let's say you see one gene saying, hey, you're going to do really bad on this in this medication. Another gene saying, hey, you're going to do really well. So eat this, don't eat this. You get conflicting advices on your genetic reports. So again, really going back into just see, hey, what are some genes and SNPs that have been extensively studied and it's been established, and really just focus on those. And maybe if we had time, we can go on to other ones. And one for particular is modafinil. So modafinil in the biohacking community especially is a really hyped up thing right now, where people just want to, especially in the tech industry, where people, programming in front of a computer all the time, they want to get that stimulant, get ahead of the person sitting next to them in the cubicle. And it's a really big deal to be able to just get everything done, right? That's the mentality. I want to get everything done. I want to get done more than the person sitting next to me. And so you take the modafinil, and by the way, I'm not saying people should take modafinil. So you take the modafinil, and then it just places you in a stimulated state. And I mean, I've tried modafinil, qualia, indazone, so many different nootropics to just see what are the effects on my body. And I think the going back to genetics is that, let's say for modafinil, you can actually see there's this gene called COMT gene, and based on that gene, we're categorized into three different, I guess, people. One is the warrior, so you worry a lot. The other one is
the warrior. Okay.
Yeah, warrior. And the other one is the warrior, which is
warrior,
fight.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then the other one is, I think it's a neutral one. That's not that exciting. But the warrior one, the one that you worry a lot, you're going to be, I want to say it's, so you're low expression, you have low expression of COMT gene, and then the dopamine is higher usually. So typically you have higher dopamine. And if you take modafinil, you're going to have absolutely no response to that nootropics. And it's really important to just see, hey, what are, like, actually look into these stuff before. I mean, obviously it's, you save more time, you save more money, and then sometimes it's also, you have reactions that are not pleasant to different drugs or different nootropics or even supplements. You can actually see, let's say for vitamin D, there's a gene for that, to see how, based on that gene, you can see if you let's say take a little bit more than the usual vitamin D, which I see some people do, then you may have a more exaggerated reaction to vitamin D toxicity in your body. So it's just so fascinating to just say, hey, I actually made this little huge sheet, wrote down every single gene that I know I want to be mindful of, and then right, every single gene, every single so, and then there were like shapes of different parts of my body, so like brain and gut and different things. And then I would just think, so what are some things I want to be mindful of? So there is this whole page of everything I know about my body, and then I want to make decisions based on looking at this, not just say.
But let me stop you there, because
Sure.
your average everyday person is listening to this and saying, well, I'm not going to have a big sheet of paper with 1,500
Yes.
things on them and
That's right.
be mindful of it every second, because if I have to be mindful of it every second, I'd rather just jump off a bridge and end it all. And so therefore, I'm not going to do anything. So what about for the every man or every woman that just wants to get some results? What would you recommend? Because we're not going to go, although we want to quote unquote hack it, most people, just think about it, we're just not going to do the work. Now, maybe you and I are going to do the work, but a lot of people, it's got to be simple, which is why Weight Watchers is so popular. You just got to count a few points and you can do everything else otherwise. It's not very effective either, totally, but so can you give us something simplified for the
I would say actually, I love that. I love the simplification. I think when I geek out on things, I do not simplify things, but I think simplification really works for people, and it really works for me as well. So genes that people, I think, want to really look into are COMT gene, there's the ApoE gene, there is MTFHR gene. These are also well established and well studied, and I think the total amount of genes that they actually want to look into, just see what's the status for them, are probably about 10 of them. And again, MTFHR gene is another one that is going to be responsible for how easily folic acid is converted into folate in our body. So the application of it is that, hey, what if, let's say someone, so I see a lot of, let's say pregnant women are just placed on, they give them the folic acid, a lot of folic acid, right? So if you know that that's the status of the gene, that's going to make a huge difference on how much supplements they're taking, or how much what they're taking. And then so I guess really distilling it down and just see what's important, I would say really figure out one goal. Let's say someone just wants to be really good athletically. Then there is a bunch of genes for that. Let's say there's a gene for you actually figuring out whether you should be doing endurance or sprint. And really just, especially if you're not someone who is a world champion in either industry, then I would really take that on and just say, if that does say in endurance, then I would take that on. Just say, hey, I'm going to do endurance from that point on, because that's going to be more customized toward our body, and it's going to place less stress on our body. We're going to get better results. We're going to be happier.
Yeah. Well, I think that's important also because people just think, oh, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to do the machine, I'm going to whatever. And that's not the right exercise for everybody. So for instance, I know you can get this genetic testing easy with 23andMe. And
Right.
I know from just getting back my 23andMe report and then putting it in a program that helps you decipher what to do lifestyle, I know my genetic type that I need 60 minutes of vigorous exercise in the morning. 60.
Perfect.
That's what my genetic type calls for.
Yeah.
I also know, we were talking about the ApoE4 gene, which is associated with Alzheimer's. I'm also thinking that, there are people who, genetically, I am 89% from sub-Saharan Africa, but they also know that in African countries, where there's less hygiene, there's less Alzheimer's. So the more sterile environment you live in, the higher likelihood is that you're going to have Alzheimer's. And so when my husband goes back to Africa, I go back with him so I can get all populated with some of this stuff that which is hard on my body, very hard on my body. But I'm saying there's so many more triggers than just that my genetic code says one thing or another. And when they're looking at, here's the percentage of people who get this, they also don't know why those group of people get it. And so I'm sitting in a group where the rate of getting Alzheimer's is higher than the normal population and higher than the Caucasian American population, but they also acknowledge that, well, that may be because of comorbidities, which it likely is. Comorbidities meaning high blood pressure and diabetes and all these other diseases that also affect how you think. So we know now that type 3 diabetes, neurotoxicity is associated with Alzheimer's. Why is it type 3 diabetes? Because type 2 diabetes, which is a sugar disease, and neurotoxicity based on glucose. And if you have these populations that have a higher incidence, then that means all the diseases that go along with this are going to be higher incident too. So I look at that and I say, okay, well, I have the gene. That just means that, you know what, I need to make sure that unlike mommy and daddy, I keep myself with my blood sugar good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the idea is to be armed with the information so that you know, let me figure out how to keep it off rather than turn it on. Now, if you don't want to know and you don't want to do anything, this is about people who want to take action. Because if you don't want to take action and you just I have a client who I told her what to do while she was traveling, and I noticed that she chose not to do it. If you're a person that says, I don't want to worry about it, you're going to have poor results.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I like what you were saying. I think that just reminded me of something. You said about, you looked into, okay, so that gene was studied, let's say, in the African-American population or whatever population was studied. And I think that's the detail that I think is so important, that when it comes to, let's say, people actually spreading information, is that they say something that was studied, let's say, in China, and then they would just say, hey, everyone should do it. And it's like, not really, no. So different. They have different genes, they have different expression of those genes. And then going back to the consumer who is just say, hey, just tell me what to do. And I guess the ones that are telling you what, they wanting you to give them information, some actually just don't want to do it. Of course, as you were saying, right? They get poor results. The one that actually want the information, there are definitely things that they can, I think genetic on its own is an incomplete picture. I want to really emphasize that, because let's say, you talked about the ApoE4 gene. That's also responsible for metabolizing fat in our body. But there are also so many other genes that are responsible for metabolizing fat. So even, let's say, MTHFR gene, that's also going to be responsible for detox of our body. So it can actually play a role indirectly into that too. So then should just someone just see, because I've seen also on 23andMe, there's just like, they take one gene and then they tell you, you would do poorly on this diet. And I was like, wait, like you only took one thing from this and you didn't look into what other things this person is experiencing, right? You just have information about genes. So then I think what I love about the really looking into the complete picture is that, hey, let's say I know about myself that I don't want to, let's say I'm really tired at 1 p.m. I would want to have my based on my gene or how quickly I metabolize caffeine. I would want to have my caffeine right around 12:01 and then not any later than that, because then if I'm really metabolizing it really slowly, I'm going to not be able to sleep at night. Let's say I don't know, I have clients who actually have trouble if they take caffeine at, let's say, 2 p.m., they can't sleep at 10 p.m. because it just takes such a long time for them to metabolize it and to get it flushed out of system. So there's a gene for that. They can actually look for it. And I think 23andMe, even the simple one, they give you that information. They tell you, hey, are you a good metabolizer of caffeine or not? Because typically it takes about 5 hours to about 8 hours for about 200 milligrams of caffeine to be flushed out of our system. So then based on our genes, that's going to be different. We may be 5 hours, we may be 8 hours, and that's the role our genes play. And I think at the very beginning, you said something about, is the genes going to be determining our life? And no, it's not going to determine our life. I think we have such a big role, even if we have the genes that are, let's say you talked, again, keep going back to what you said, the 8.4 gene. Someone might just say, hey, then that's it. Like, I'm done. I'm not going to, I'm not going to do anything about this.
Well, it's interesting because before it was already always on my report and I just didn't pay it attention. And, on 23andMe, they have, they want you to do different types of experimental testing that they have on the computer. And every once in a while I go and do a little bit more because I'd like to contribute to research. So I went on, and you guys are not going to find this surprising when I say it. I was doing the how fast your brain operates testing. They have some of that. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so I decided, well, okay, I'll do this. I want to see how fast my brain really does. Okay, so obviously when I got the results back, in which they give you feedback immediately, my brain was operating much faster than average. So how at risk am I necessarily if I do the right things? Because already I'm significantly above age-matched peers, which I don't know how much that means, because a lot of times, now I'm the kind of person, and you may feel like this too, I know people are going to listen and say, oh my God, a lot of times I have to breathe to be patient because I feel like the world is going on backwards.
Right.
How are they going forward slowly, but backwards, because things are just happening in slow, snail-paced motion to me. That's how I feel walking around in the world, where it's difficult for me to sit and be patient and wait. I'm sure you understand that.
That's funny. You wouldn't do well on stimulants then.
Oh my gosh, no. And interestingly, one of my sons was on a stimulant because they said he had ADD at a point. Wow. And he became the Energizer Bunny. It was like, oh my God. I was just like, but on the other side, I noticed that things like caffeine had the opposite effect. It calmed him down.
Yeah, interesting.
So all these drugs, there's a field called pharmacogenetics, which almost to me now, it should be standard that they check some of this. So there are major drugs that we use that we understand genetically in some populations they can be lethal. And now we don't do pharmacogenetics standardly. So when people have a really bad adverse event with a drug, it could be that their pharmacogenetics, their genetics for that drug, are what's causing the event. And a lot of that we can get and we do know now, but it's not standard of care. So a lot of people are getting sick and dying from medicines when we have the answers at our fingertips, but we're just not using it. And so that's why when people go to take drugs, they ought to beware. And so I'm telling you about in my family, the stimulant, Energizer Bunny. The other stimulant that people commonly use, relaxation. And that's not what you would expect based on what the package inserts it as.
Yeah, that's fascinating for me, especially in the area of sleep, is that that's what I really like about customizing everything to each person, as opposed to just say, hey, there's this holy lifestyle that everyone should follow. That's so important to know, hey, this is how you're doing on caffeine, because so I talked a little bit earlier on about blue light and how blue light actually lowering our cortisol, elevating our cortisol and then lowering our melatonin at night, so past 5 p.m. So there are actually a third of population who can get blue light at night and their sleep is going to be better. And there's no explanation for it. We have no idea. And that's a detail. I don't share it everywhere because people get confused. But I think it's so important to just say, hey, could totally be the case for someone who gets blue light at night. And by the way, blue light, I keep saying blue light. Let me explain what blue light is the light that you get from the screen. Let's say from your phone, from your laptop, from your projector. It's a specific wavelength of light. And when we get it without the red light, which would be the sun. So when we look at the sun, we see some white light, and it has red light, it has blue light as well. But if we, let's say, look at our screen, it has only blue light. It doesn't have the red light, and that's why it's harmful. And so it could totally be the case. Like every person could do differently on different substances, medication, light, and then it's good to know what the, I guess, typical reaction is, and then really look into just see, hey, what about my body? How am I doing on caffeine?
Yeah, and there's even other pieces. I mean, we're talking about food and supplements.
Yeah.
That whole other area of energetics, body biofield and bioenergetics that people don't typically talk about because it's invisible and it's physics. And whenever you say physics, people just shut off their brain. But it's real and it's giving information to your body. So a lot of people may be having interference with their body with these invisible stuff, like the electromagnetic field that is coming from things like phones and things. So it might not just be blue light. There could be other physics that's going on that's causing a problem with your body and blockages in your body that make it impossible for you to get well unless you address those body field images. So I noticed in myself that, people know I'm living part-time one place and part-time in Manhattan. And I noticed, you know what, when I'm in Manhattan, I don't sleep as well. What's going on here? I mean, when I'm out in Pennsylvania, I'm good. But as soon as I step into Manhattan, I'm in my house, in my bed, I'm not sleeping as well. What's going on? And I really think it's because of all the electromagnetic frequency stuff that are going around that are causing interruption in sleep, which is why people in New York are so hyper and crazy. So it's not simply what food do I eat or don't eat, and what food you eat and don't eat and metabolize in a particular way is going to be particular to you. So for instance, there was a study where they checked diabetics and they checked them on potatoes and they checked them on bananas and saw what their insulin response was. And then they switched the groups around, checked it again, and they noticed that some people had insulin spikes from potatoes and not from bananas, and vice versa. And so if you say, everybody, you shouldn't eat potatoes and bananas because they're going to cause insulin spikes, that's not necessarily the right answer. You see what I'm saying? And people have to understand that, right?
I love it.
But on the other side, when we're talking about this,
Yeah.
What do we do in functional medicine? And what do you do when you work with clients we're able to help people put this knowledge that people read on the University of Facebook into action so that you can live your life, and to give you step by step and guide you. So we're talking about like giverish here, but I talk giverish because what I want you to do, if you don't want me to help you, get Arvin to help you. You see what I'm saying? Get somebody to help you who really knows their stuff, so they'll recognize it, and then you say, oh, you're having, like we're talking here about cortisol, and you're saying, cortisol? What's going on with that? Okay, that's the belly fat hormone. And if you got belly fat, one of your problems is cortisol. Then you have to figure out there's 8 or 10 different cortisol curve patterns. And when we figure out which cortisol pattern you have, that's going to dictate what we have to do to be able to get your body back in balance.
Yeah.
But all the patterns will make you have belly fat. Okay.
Basically.
But we have to figure out which pattern is. So we got 10 patterns. 10 patterns all lead to belly fat. It could be high, it could be low, it could spike here and there, it could look like a zigzag. And what happens is once we see what that pattern is, then we get what are the lifestyle modifications you should do, what are the supplements that are going to work for that based on the pattern. Yeah,
I love it. And going into making it actionable, I think, some people probably just heard maybe blue light for the first time, or you talked about EMF, electromagnetic frequency, for the first time, and they're freaking out now. They just say, oh my God, New York City is just such a mess. And actually, I think our mutual friend, Connie, she moved out of New York City because of it.
Yep.
So totally, that's the case. And I just had recently, so we had someone come in with it's called a cornet device. It measures EMF. We actually went around our house and measured every single thing. So we put it next to our microwave. We put it next to our, let's say, TV router. And I'm actually really far from the corner of this room, but there is a router here temporarily in the corner of this room. When I'm sitting here, this cornet was showing such a high reading. It was disgusting. I mean, I was just like, oh my God, like that's how high of the magnetic field there is created by this router, even though I'm that far away from it.
So now, what did you do about that?
Yeah, good one. So you buy, making actionable, right? So you buy this thing called a modem, it's called a router guard box, and you place your router inside it. Or even better thing that I'm gonna do with this place is actually get Ethernet cable everywhere, and then turn the Wi-Fi off. And then if you can't do that, at least turn the Wi-Fi off at least during the time you're sleeping, because you can do that. You're not gonna use the Wi-Fi. The other thing we talked about.
Let me give another tip about that, because there's a company called Safe Connect that makes little devices that you can put on all these
I have those
equipment and plug into your house. And so what I have done is I have the little Safe Connect on my computer, on my iPad, on my phones, on my routers, and then there's a plug-in that I plugged into each level of my house to diffuse this. I'm going to have to do more on my New York place somehow, because it's not working the same way. Because I have a router in my bedroom in Pennsylvania. It doesn't bother me, but I have it, everything's safe connected.
Got it.
Okay?
Yeah.
You can even get these Safe Connects in pendants and bracelets, so you can put them on the body. So today I'm sitting in my office and there's Wi-Fi all over the place. So technically I'm not protected the same way I'm in my house, but you can get jewelry that's actually pretty that you can wear to protect you against these type of electromagnetic frequency waves.
I would be curious to see, did you measure to see if those Safe Connect, because I have it actually here, but did you measure to see if the Safe Connect actually reduces EMF or doesn't?
You know what? I did not measure it, so I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. I'd be curious. I'd be really curious.
But I feel better.
Okay, that's amazing.
Placebo.
You know what?
And guess what? Even if the placebo effect, placebo effect is good.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. So COMT gene actually is responsible for the placebo effect as well. So if you're low on COMT gene, I guess if it's downregulated, that just means that placebo effect works for you, which is perfect. I mean, it's amazing. I wish all the placebo things work on me. If something works for me, I'm like, yeah, sure. Thank you so much, right? It's perfect. I really think that's like a thing to just look into that for the EMF as you're doing already, because you for your bedroom, for everywhere you are, especially if you're in an area where it's a metropolitan city and it's like so many things going on. In Vancouver, there's this website, actually everywhere there's this website. You can go, I think it's called antennasearch.com. You can find out where the cell towers are. Are they close to your house or are they not? You can't obviously move the cell towers, but you can do certain things to really minimize the effects the cell towers are having. The antennas, you got to remove them. The smart meters, you don't want to have the smart meters at your house. If I know some of our friends, they actually put a tag on it, like, do not install smart meters. But if that's already past that stage where you have to have the smart meter, then I would place 3 layers of aluminum foil around the smart meter. That's we actually measured that. That showed to have actually most of the EMF captured within that area. So there's a plethora of things people can do. And I would just say always, like, start with one. So you heard today talking about the EMF. There is the EMF. So at least now like, let's say at least shut the circuit off, maybe at night. And if you think you're going to forget it, there's a timer for it. You can actually plug it into, you can buy it from Walmart. I think it's $5. You can plug it into your outlet and it shuts that outlet off, let's say at 10 p.m.
I need that.
It's like perfect, right? It's so perfect. It's
yeah.
so perfect. Yeah.
I need one of those. I'm figuring out. Now, the importance of doing this podcast is to raise awareness that number one, it's not as simple as you'd like to make it, but there is hope and help.
Yeah.
But the hope is there are small steps that you can take, and some of them we have given here. Here's some small steps you can take, like you can get the box that goes around and you can get these little things. So to be able to, there's actionable steps. And as we talked about here, there's not one right diet. And even if you're doing a particular eating protocol, I like to call it strategic eating as opposed to diet. So
love it.
And I do strategic eating.
Yeah.
Strategic because it's going to work right for our particular body, but what works right for Arvin is not going to be right for Veronica. But there may be similarities. There may be similarities for a particular reason. So for instance, I've had a brain injury, so I got to really watch out for my brain, because brain injury plus the gene could mean, a soup of bad outcome, but it's not going to have a bad outcome. And I think they should study people like me personally and study people like you. See, what we do now is a lot of times we study sick people, but what we really must do is study well people, and study well people who have sick parents to figure out, well, why are they well and these two are sick? Because a lot of people come from families who are sick, and they're well and stay well. And we should also be studying the lady who's 117 in Jamaica with a son who's 97.
Yes.
So she's in a third world country where healthcare is not like it is in the U.S. Mm-hmm. And yet she's lived to 117 and her son has lived to 97. How did that happen? We need to study that versus just studying sick people.
Exactly.
So
I love it.
Study how people stay well versus how people stay sick, how people get sick, and what pharmaceutical is going to work with them. So of course I would like people who are sick to have hope, and if they're acutely, there needs to be pharmaceuticals. But once you get and you're above water, you have to figure out, well, what do I do to reverse that negativity. And people can reverse cancer, reverse diabetes, reverse MS, reverse Alzheimer's. It has all been done now. And so therefore, this is to give hope that there are people who know what to do to help you get results in your life. So Arvin, I got to give your website again, hackmybiology.com. Arvin Khamseh?
Yes, you got it right.
Khamseh, hackmybiology.com. So
Yes.
Thank you so much.
You got it. Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Wellness Revolution podcast. If you want to hear more on how to bring wellness into your life, visit drveronica.com. See you all next week. Take care.